So let's get started. And firstly, I want to thank you for accepting the invitation of this interview. And I'm gonna briefly inform you about this interview. So this interview will focus on the potential applications of the metaverse in education industry and its impacts on learning effects. So it is for my research project in EAP course. The course topic is Smart Cities and Smart Lifestyles, instructed by Meng Zhang. And this is a semi-structured interview, so there might be follow-up questions based on your answers. And so do you agree that I will record the video and audio?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so firstly, could you please introduce yourself?
So I'm Daisy. I'm NYU Shanghai alumni, class of 2021. And previously, back in NYU Shanghai, I did the major in interactive media arts. And right now, I'm at UC Berkeley's Master of Design program with a focus on human-computer interaction.
Okay. So as you mentioned, you have a focus on human-computer interaction, which refers to HCI. And I also learned that you have some experience on educational technology. So could you please elaborate more on this topic?
Yeah, so educational technology is actually kind of a broad concept to start with. I would say, like, speaking from my personal experience, I did some projects that aims to use all this interactive technology, say, for example, sensors, to build a more engaging environment for people to learn. Say, for example, previously I collaborated with some other IMA students, and we built an immersive environment where the students can use sensors to read the input. And then we also developed that into a workshop where those students can use like software called Scratch, and they can programming the input and output of the sensor. So by doing that, they will on one hand learn how to do all this programming thing, and on the other hand, they will be able to build all this storytelling environments on their own. That's one example. And in general, I would say, like, for educational technology, there are probably several different branches. Say, for example, one branch is focusing on developing tools that will help people to have better learning outcome. Say, for example, when you are taking a like English test, and there's an organization called ETS, and all the things that ETS is doing is actually related to technology, because it's basically using technology for some educational events, and it involves some level of automation or some use of technology to enable the scaling of the whole educational activities or events. That will be one example. And say the second type is I'm actually developing a game or a kind of courses. And during this process, I develop a game that help people to learn physics better. And that is also related to educational technology, as you can tell. So yeah, there are really a lot of things to go with. It depends on what kind of specific thing you want to dig deeper.
Yeah, so when you're designing those projects or those tools, like what kind of factors do you consider to like facilitate or improve the educational outcome?
So back then, in terms of like the whole evaluation of the say learning outcome, we actually refer to some existing theories or framework. For example, actually we call it like learning science. It's kind of like a major or like an area that develops some theories to help people understand how can you set some goals for teaching. And because it's called learning science, so it's more learner-centered. You can probably use user-centered method as a metaphor for it. So instead of saying like teachers should do A, B, C, D, E, it focuses on what are some goals for the learner to accomplish. And That's like before the learning process. And during the learning process, what are some activities that the learner can engage with? And after that, we also have this evaluation process where you probably need to have some instruments to evaluate whether the learning outcome is kind of satisfy your goal that you set before. Say you can use interviews or questionnaires to get some results or data that you want to have.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And as the concept metaverse is very popular recent days, so what's your understanding of it?
Um, so it's like speaking of metaverse, like I would say like general level of understanding, it's like it's basically a vision when everyone can kind of connect together in a virtual environment, and this environment is in a sense really close to the environment that we are in right now. It's like some people consider it as a digital twin or a digital replica of your physical world, and some part of it, say the digital environment, may go crazy when you're in those called metaverse, and that's like kind of imagination level. And in terms of the technology behind it, I would say it's more of like the whole infrastructure thing. Say, for example, in order for a lot of people to actually connect it together, you need to have really powerful server or computation power to support that. And that's why a kind of really controversial point about metaverse right now is about whether you can actually do it, because there are people who goes really positive about the technology development, while there are on another group of people who kind of have a spectacle attitude towards that. And like basically, my personal view is the whole metaverse vision is not really accomplishable within, say, a decade, and it really require a lot of technology level development to support the whole kind of infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I think we can conclude that the metaverse is mainly a virtual world for the users, for the normal people, right?
Yeah, on a like really abstract level is kind of the definition.
Yeah, so what kind of technology of the metaverse do you think is appropriate for facilitating education experience, like the learning experience?
Um, I would say like probably this question have a lot of like pre-assumption here already. Say whether a technology as that is related to metaverse is really helpful for like facilitating some learning activity. Like the question itself is kind of something that we need to think more about. Say, for example, speaking of metaverse, people will think about VR, AR kind of technology. And there are already a lot of applications that combine VR with education. And among this group of the current products, say we have a bunch of VR education app, and its learning effect really varies based on the content you use, the like technology you use. So it's kind of hard to say whether the technology VR itself is good or not. I would say it really depends on how you use that technology and what kind of educational activity you want to use that technology for.
Okay, I see. Um, yeah, so how do you think, what do you think like the HCI technology can be applied to education and maybe in the metaverse?
Um, when speaking of like HCI technology, what specific thing are you thinking about?
Um,
Um,
I
because
think
in a sense, like VR or AR, that kind of technology itself is also related to HCI.
okay, maybe some like physical virtual connected technology.
Can you give me an example of it?
Just like the things we learn in interaction lab. So there's maybe sensors and buttons, and maybe we can. I don't know. Do you think we can include those physical things into the metaverse?
Yeah, sure. So say for example, um, like maybe last month I was at MIT's Reality Hack, and this year the first place for that hackathon is actually an app that combine Arduino with VR. So what they're doing is they have this like virtual Arduino board, and you can in VR you can kind of connect all the circuits and you will be able to see a simulated version of like the result of it. So you don't actually, I forget whether that they actually have an Arduino board or not, but their concept is you can play with Arduino in VR, and it's like a virtual simulation of it. And meanwhile, it is also possible to map the Arduino, like physical Arduino board with that virtual one. So it's like whatever you do with the physical Arduino board, you can actually see the changes at the same time in the VR environment. So you can consider it as two layers. One is the physical layer where you actually have an Arduino board, and the second layer is the digital layer that you can see in VR environment. And those two layers have a certain level of mapping that synchronize what is happening in the VR world and the physical world.
Okay, yeah, that's really meaningful contribution. Thank you. So, um, it's like can I imply that we can like do some physics courses or physics experiments combining both physical world and in the virtual world?
Yeah, I would say like for the existing research result or like current products, that's definitely doable.
Okay, yeah. So when the students maybe they are doing the physics courses in VR in the virtual world, do you think the virtual experience is equivalent to physical practice, or do you think it's better than physical practice?
I would say like I didn't really try one before. I'm kind of trying to imagine how that will look like based on my previous experience with VR. Um, I guess if you are actually playing with physics, then the kind of the results in real life might be better than the VR because after all, what the VR is doing is actually calculating or simulating the like physical condition. And there are a lot of calculation going on, and whether that simulation is accurate depends on what kind of algorithm you use to build that physics things. So and say when you're doing that in physical world, then you just like do it in real life. So there's no calculation needed. There's like nature thing happen. So in terms of the results, my guess is probably in real life it will be like more accurate. But on the other hand, it also depends on what kind of, say, physics experiment you want to do. There might be some really like difficult physical experiment to do in real life, and also like in terms of control, it will be harder. While in the virtual world, say you can control the number of the gravity to see how things react under different gravity parameters. That's something you can't easily do in real world. So there are different things going on in two different versions, I would say.